Sharing. Always takes a second to show up. Oh, there we are. All right. Good afternoon. Happy Friday. We have Crampy Chris in the house. We got Real Talk with Consult. Dave is on some appointments, so he's not going to be with us today. But we got a lot to discuss. We got some interesting judges, and we've got judges getting in trouble. We got a couple Florida man stories. We got this football stuff is getting crazy, huh?
Yep.
And we got a lot, actually, with the football. It really brings on some interesting questions, what we got going on, whether or not these conferences are going to play or not play. So it's going to be crazy.
Yeah, I mean, two of the major ones seem to have been
What is it,
failing.
Big Ten?
Big Ten and Pac-12.
Pac-12?
Yep. So they've announced, at least last I read, that they were intending on postponing, but then...
Pac-12 definitely is out, right?
Yeah, so is Big Ten, from my understanding.
Right.
However...
The SEC, I know that I read today there's 6 FBS conferences that are still in it. The ACC,
Right.
Also Notre Dame's going to play a 10-game schedule or planning to. The American Athletic Conference, the AAC, the Big 12, Conference USA, SEC, and the Sun Belt Conference are all still in it.
Right, so 3 of the 5, or what they call the Power 5,
Yeah,
are
are
still
still in
in.
it. Yeah, it's going to be interesting in terms of, when you think about the repercussions, as far as like the FBS Bowl, the bowl games, how that's
Yeah.
going to play out, right? That's going to be interesting to see how that all.
Well, a lot of
shakes
them are
out.
aligned or aligned with conferences,
Right,
and
right.
what your standing in the conference is pertaining to the bowl game. So that's going to be a big one.
Yep.
You
Yeah.
know, the Rose Bowl's always been Big Ten, Pac-12, or Pac-10 who became Pac-12,
Right.
And what happens there?
Right. Like I said, it's going to and then you got to wonder, just like the sponsorships, and I guess you can't really get ahead of yourselves. I'm sure nobody's thinking bowl games just yet.
As far as sponsorships goes, this is just a personal opinion. I think after the absolute, drubbing that the sports world took through March Madness and through a lot of the baseball season, I don't think they're going to have a lot of difficulty finding sponsors that are going to pay for televised games.
The interest is going to be there.
Oh, people are dying for
we
sports.
are so desperate for sports.
They are, and college football is huge.
Yeah.
Arguably, or many people argue, college football is either becoming or has become even more watched than NFL.
Well, look at this. What about Vegas?
Oh, yeah. Well, they'll take odds on anything, but I mean, when you have, well, like I said, three of the Power 5 are still in, and saying we're going ahead with our season and we're going to play. I think last show we had talked a little bit about some of the smaller schools, whether they're independents or from 1AA conferences or whoever. And, every year they look forward to those games because it gives them a chance to play against, the more significant programs.
Right.
But a lot of them may not be able to meet NCAA standards for safety reasons or health precautions or what have you, whatever the testing needs to be done to get through the NCAA rules. And from my understanding, they're still trying to develop a plan for how they're going to go ahead with the games and make sure that the players are safe and the referees, umpires, staff, are safe. Big question is going to be, are they going to sell tickets?
I doubt it. I mean, we had a conversation in the office the other day about, why don't they even do like, 30% or 25% occupancy, right? We talked about pro versus college.
I mean, you think about it and you think inside the stadium, right? And I'm, we talked about some other like more minor events to people, like different like I had my daughter's ballet recital, and they had all the rows 6 feet apart,
right?
And then,
but everybody was next
to
one another.
Everyone was kind of elbow to elbow. But if you're in a stadium and let's say you seated every other row, so you start with the front row, and then the third, the fifth, the seventh, all the way up the stadium, and then 6 feet apart for people in the stands, you can get a lot of people in a football stadium to watch a game.
Sure.
I guess the bigger question would be outside the stadium, tailgate parties and people stacking up in line to get into the stadium.
Restrooms.
There's no. How are you going to keep those people apart? It would take like the National Guard, because the police forces can't handle it. So that's one issue as far as the COVID goes. So I mean, it's really debatable because you're. I think as time has gone on, and we talked about this when you brought up the issue about the initial 90 to 100 days, and then it was kind of like, okay, let's play it by ear from there, and it's been going month to month, and it hasn't been going well.
Yeah.
So how do you attend to those types of issues? So I think a lot of it has to do with those types of things. How are you going to patrol tailgating and parking and what people are doing, and especially students? I mean, students are students.
Yeah. Well, I was. You think about things, and you don't think them all the way through, right? Like we talk about these subjects, but then I was thinking about the tailgating would probably be the issue there. Or what if, would they even allow people to be or have tailgate parties, right? I mean, or would there be a limit on X amount of people, and what could you? Then there's like that layer of things, and
like parking spaces, or they could put cones or something to kind of keep them apart. But people are going to mingle, they're going to walk, people
are going to get drunk.
They're going to be drunk.
How are you going to throw up with your mask on?
Oof, that's rough.
What did you call it, a strainer?
Well, it might be another little niche market. We can develop a mask with a bag attached. Yeah.
Have you seen the one that's plastic where you can actually see somebody's mouth?
No, I have not. No.
Yeah, I saw that the other day. It was a little weird for me.
Does it fog up?
Well, it didn't the particular time that I saw it, but for myself, if I was wearing that and I had that plastic piece up against my mouth, A, it would annoy the hell out of me.
Yeah.
B, it's got to be like heavier. I mean, wearing a
mask. Oh
yeah,
you mean It looks like a gas mask.
No. It actually looked like a regular mask. But then right here, it was like see-through.
Like a
folder, a file folder that was clear.
Right.
It looked like that material. I guess plastic, right?
Yeah.
Like a plastic shield.
Yeah, I and of course they're still dealing with issues on the medical community, transmission. I don't even think they've got that nailed down.
There's it's crazy, and thinking about these games and seeing these games and how they're going to do it, or how could they do it, right? You understand why they're not doing it, right? Because it calls into, you have to have some sort of protocol plan or in place, and then you have you look at concessions. Who's going to work the concessions, right? Those people typically that's always like a second job for some of them, and they make extra money. It's just interesting. Like there's ripples where you see how I know I'm watching these basketball games. You watch the hockey, and you watch some of these other sporting events. I know I tried to watch baseball, and it looked absolutely ridiculous. Just can't get into it. Not that the crowd, I don't know, it just seems really weird.
Yeah, and baseball, the players clearly are segregated at least the ones in the field,
Sure.
Football, it's a contact sport. There's
Yeah.
scrums and
it's been interesting seeing, there's been some fights in baseball and how
there
that's
was one.
all.
I think last night I saw one.
Yeah,
and actually there have been a few of them.
And I think they're looking at that a little more seriously this year with the COVID situation. But it's just bizarre to me. Trainers, football in particular, maybe lacrosse.
Right.
Basketball, that's contact.
Oh yeah,
for sure. Basketball, it's not supposed to be a contact sport, but it's a contact sport.
right. And especially when you're running up and down. I mean, football. Maybe they could develop some kind of a plexiglass shield to put over.
I think they are wearing
acts like a
shields.
mask.
David made some mention about them having some sort of full face shield or something like that.
NBA, baseball, hockey. I mean, you can't skate with a mask on. I mean, you'd be dying.
Yeah.
Asphyxiation, right? So it'll be interesting because the
well, there's no JUCO ball. There's no Division III ball. There's no the Division II. The Great American Conference is still in it.
right.
The NAIA has 7 different conferences that still plan on playing. And as far as the FCS, Ohio Valley Conference is the only one that's going to be playing. So there's going to be sports. Golf has been all right.
Again, aside from the crowds and people, crowding around a green or what have you to watch, and I think it's more controllable. I think in a football atmosphere, just because the volume of people, which they can cut down with ticket sales or
transportation getting there, right?
Right.
You got to look at, like you said, the tailgating, concessions, all that stuff. With that, does cleaning up, is that now a hazmat area potentially? Right, if people leave things, right? I mean,
the food servers, are they going to have to wear?
Oh, for
hazmat
sure.
suits.
It's all. It's interesting. It's interesting to see how. Whether or not they're even just going to play. That's the big thing.
Yeah.
And the
I know a lot of the schools, particularly some of the schools that have very prominent medical schools, and they have their physicians and their research staffs actually advising the sports teams on safety issues with COVID, and a lot of them are coming out and saying it's no less safe than any other activity that's going on. I mean, go to a mall, right? I mean, you're walking around, you go into the food court, they separate the tables and stuff, but the bottom line is people are still walking next to each other up and down the aisles and into stores and stuff.
Sure.
And, there's just really no practical way that I can see that you can control that.
It's interesting just to see. It's interesting to see the
politicizing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It's Friday. My mouth
It is.
We've done so much work in the studio, man. I feel like I'm like tongue-tied, if you will.
Writing, recording, writing.
Rewriting, re-recording. It's crazy. It's crazy with what we got going on in the world right now. And I think people are tired of it. I think they want their sports. Don't you feel restless? It feels...
Oh, yeah.
It's like you walk around and it's like we're in reality here every day. But then sometimes when you... the few bits of time that I have where I don't think about work.
Right.
It's like you contemplate other things.
Could you imagine if it was a World Cup year?
Man.
It would.
Well, look at the Olympics.
Yeah.
I mean, look how it affected the Olympics.
I feel so bad for those athletes.
Well, they say they're going to do them next year, but it'll be interesting to see because, if something breaks out, and how is this affecting their training,
Oh, yeah. I mean, they trained so hard for 4 years. Yeah, because even though they're staggered,
in some cases it's really a lifetime, right?
Right. You look at gymnasts. The lifespan of a gymnast for an Olympic gymnast. They get past 13, 14 years old. They're pretty much
Well, if you look at these the college gymnasts, right? They all look so beat up. knee surgeries, elastic, support bandages everywhere,
Well, plus naturally they start growing.
Oh, sure,
And,
sure.
and so
Hormones.
a year in that age bracket is, I mean,
Devastating.
yeah, I mean, and if you just go through all of the sports, they're training to become literally the best that they've ever been in their life.
And trying to peak.
Then they got to compete to get onto the teams.
Right.
And then they're competing for slotting on the teams. And then all of a sudden they say, okay, you got to wait another year. Now you got to go through an entire another round of whatever the qualifying matches are.
Are they going to make them? Are they going to make them requalify?
I don't know. I was trying to find an answer on that because let's say whether it's fencing or shooting or wrestling or what have you, do you now have to go through an entire extra season?
Well, not only that, but then like next year would be like world championships, right?
Right.
Where now they won't have those world championships, and
yeah.
I think, is this a Ryder Cup year or is this a President's Cup year? This is a President's Cup year, isn't it?
I'm not sure.
Or is it Ryder Cup? I get confused.
Yeah.
Actually, this should be a Ryder Cup year because 2001 they canceled the Ryder Cup because of 9/11. Then it became an even year event. So this year should be a Ryder Cup year. I wonder if they'll cancel that and then I'll bring it back to, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, it could be. We had pulled up, we were looking for some of the issues because there's lots of issues. Because in the meantime, going back to the college football, you had the NIL issue, the name, image, likeness issue. So now...
This has come out. This is more information this week, right?
Yeah, they're debating on how to deal with it because the football season.
So the Pac-12, part of the athletes that signed, there's two things that were happening out west. I know one was that what We Are United group, right?
Right. That's the.
Were they all Pac-12 athletes? I think they were, weren't they?
What is it? The National Collegiate Athlete Association? No, that's NCAA. It's National College Players Association or something like that.
Okay.
Where they're talking about unionizing based on the new NIL provisions, which are not even written yet, and what issues are going to be involved with that, from everything from recruiting to who can you talk to. I mean, let's face it. When you're dealing with high school students, the overwhelming majority of them are minors. They can't legally engage in contracts. So now, are they all going to have agents? If they get agents, are they now professionals? And that's what there was the big issue that's arising now, where they're fighting over the amateurism provisions of the NCAA rules, saying, well,
the college players want to unionize, right?
Right.
That's what came out this week.
Yes.
Is they're trying to unionize now. It's not just a football thing. This is all athletes, right?
Right. And there's other practical issues with that because let's say you have, blue chippers in college football, for example, and they have, now it's $1 billion business in these, recruiting services and online services. I mean, they're even recruiting kids and looking at kids that, coming out of junior high school, and it's like, seriously? I mean, do you know how much can change in 2 to 3, 4 years?
Oh, sure.
By the time they're a freshman in high school until they, get into college, and what happens with contractual obligations? How are they going to deal with whatever the compensation is? I mean, let's say somebody signs an endorsement deal. Then the NCAA is jumping in and saying, well, wait a second, if they're going to get paid for their name, image, and likeness, what do we get for our uniform and our emblem and our, our university?
Well, you brought up a great point earlier today where you said, what if you have a kid that's sponsored by Nike, right?
Right.
And he's a running back and he's like a blue chipper coming out of high school, right? So he goes to, let's say UF, and he's, he's like, basically they get like the number one draft pick,
Right,
I'll call him
sure.
a draft pick, but
Yeah.
he's obviously
He
a
commits, he signs
5-star athlete, right?
Goes there.
And he's a blue chipper, so he signs his image and likeness deal, and he's got and actually, that's one of the things that we were talking about actually, or one of the things that I read that they were discussing is if you go to an Adidas school, how does it affect your image and likeness if Nike wants to, how is that going to come into play, right? Are you going to be now, I don't care what the school signed for, I have a deal with Nike, so I'm going to wear my Nikes. And then if that's the fact, we talked about this, is now that the agent is representing said kid at UF, the star running back, and let's say that there's a walk-on or a lower recruited athlete that actually is out playing him or out hustling him.
Late bloomer comes in, and all of a sudden he's working real hard.
Yeah, busted his ass all summer.
Comes out to
comes
spring
in,
camp
he's like,
and
what's going
outruns
on?
the shit out of him, and now
better
what happened?
attitude, outplays the kid. How is that going to affect the coaching? And is because this kid, he's got incentives possibly. Will deals be allowed to be incentivized? Right.
And then are the coaching staffs and the ADs going to have to be dealing with an overwhelming flock of agents who are pushing their
my
kids
guy needs to start because he's incentivized.
Yeah, he needs more time because he's got a contract with Nike,
Right.
and there's incentive clauses or however the hell they're going to structure those contracts. Because sports and entertainment contracts have never been like your traditional business contracts. I mean, they are in a lot of ways, but with the incentive clauses and bonus clauses for different things, how is that going to affect not only the playing time, but how's it going to affect the locker room?
Well, your brother, you speak with him, and you spoke with him a little bit this week, and he says it's just up in the air. It's crazy, right? Like,
I mean, it's going to be.
I mean, potentially recruiting a high school athlete, you may actually have to talk to an agent,
right? I mean, if usually the parents are involved, but now that you're dealing with endorsement deals and things like that, parents aren't equipped to do that. I mean, there may be few and far between whose father might be, in that realm or what have you. But for the most part, who's
what's the guy
to be
from Big
with
Baller Brand? He didn't know anything about that, and he seemed to screw up his kid. I mean, he seemed to manage his kids' careers all right.
Yeah.
No, it's crazy. It's crazy that we were talking about this today too, right? Are there going to the agents have got to be going nuts, man. This has got to be a huge playground for them, right? Because it's availability to more kids, right?
Right.
And earlier.
And there have always been, under the amateurism provisions of the NCAA rules, there have always been very strict restrictions. And Florida was one of the first states to come out with it, not only because of how big football is in the Southeast.
Baseball.
But back with FSU, with the Foot Locker scandal, that kicked it off. Florida was the first state that made it actually a felony for an agent to contact a student, prior to certain deadlines and things like that.
It was that late that happened, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, it really used to be the Wild West, huh?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I knew some athletes locally that played and went to like big schools like Georgia, Florida, and I heard stories where, a kid got paid his job. He was paid as a landscaper, right?
Right.
And his job
was making $3,000 a week.
Not that kind of money, but he was making, $500-600 a week, right? But he would go out to a field and take a ruler and put it on the ground, and he had to let somebody know that the grass got above 2 inches or 3 inches, whatever the hell they told him. Damn well he didn't go out there and measure anything, but it was a technical job. And then we also talked, another thing is what happens with the image and likeness thing if you're like with a car dealership or you're with.
Well, I was just going to say that's another area that we haven't even discussed yet, which is boosters.
Ugh.
I mean, how are you going to patrol?
Well, can a booster essentially pay a kid for his likeness and say like, hey, come to so-and-so Ford, you know, and they put the kid in a Ford, and
Right.
he's the running back for the local.
Kid shows up as, you know,
And now he's
after a week in spring camp, he's driving around in a Lincoln Navigator.
right,
And I was like, where'd that come from?
right.
So, you know, and then how does that affect, you know, his relationship with his teammates?
Right.
You know, because, I mean, theoretically, you know, the esprit de corps of the team is important to, you know, how the team develops and developing as a team, because it's a team sport.
Sure.
And, you know, the old adage, there's no I in team. Well, if you got 5 or 6 guys who are receiving these endorsement contracts and everything else, and like I said, in the backdrop, you got agents or they're bombing coaches with phone calls.
Well, what
about
if you're an
playing
offensive
times.
lineman that doesn't get any attention,
Right.
and
yeah.
your boy, you know, the guy that you're blocking for, you know, all of a sudden he's driving around and
It
he's
becomes
got
like the
pocket
longest
money
yard.
and, you know. Well, how many when Deion Sanders played at Florida State, right? Did it, I mean, can you name anybody else that was on the squad? I can name one other player, only because I know him personally. But can you name anybody else that was on the squad then?
Not off the top of my head. I'm trying to remember.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Now, a guy like that, right? If that's in today's world,
Sure.
you know, like in back when the quarterback for UCF a couple years ago that got hurt, right?
Right.
There was a couple of kids on there that you knew about, right? But other than that, it was all about that quarterback, right? If he's the one, you know, because he could get some local deals, right?
Sure. But you look at an Ohio State or a Michigan or some of the.
Well, let's face
you
it.
know,
You know, the
bigger
receivers,
teams.
the defensive backs, the linebackers, maybe an occasional lineman, defensive lineman, maybe a tight end,
Right.
quarterback and running back heavy, obviously.
Yeah. DBs and defensive ends are always high demand.
Yeah. In today's game.
Yes.
Right.
Right. Speed kills.
Yeah, and but you know those guys are the ones who are going to get the deals. You know, the interior linemen, you're rarely going to see any of those guys getting anything.
Yeah. I mean, it just, you know, and then the flip side of it is, you know, the argument which began the whole thing was that these schools are making literally billions of dollars off of the performance of
Sure.
the players, and the players, you know, I know it's easy to say, well, yeah, but they're getting a free education for it. But when you look at it from a kind of a business perspective, if you will, you know, these teams are making, you know, billions of dollars in TV money and stuff for the performance of the athletes. I think there's a legitimate argument that the athletes should be entitled to gain something from that, because it's their performance, their work ethic, their, you know,
I'm conflicted on this issue.
it's a tough issue.
I'm conflicted. I really am conflicted. It's I agree with you in some ways, right? I do understand. You know, let's face it. You know, football, pretty much, football and basketball,
Right.
right? Pretty much fund all schools,
Yeah.
right?
I mean, you win a major bowl game, you can like literally build 2 buildings.
Well, you saw
Yeah.
what happened at USF, right?
Sure.
And you know, USF went from having
Their
basically
medical school-
trailers,
Right.
you know, trailers for the players,
Right.
right, with a new program,
Yep.
to building a medical school, and it being, and actually it's a competitive medical school. It's a phenomenal medical
Oh
school.
yeah, and the
you know?
Moffitt Cancer Center is
ridiculous.
with Sloan Kettering and
If you're
one
if
other-
you're on the West Coast, it's all you see,
yeah,
right? You
and
know,
they're one of the top in the nation, if not the world now. You know?
and in 2000, you didn't hear any of that.
No, they
So-
were struggling to get people, and then, you know, I mean, it's just a fact, you know, and it's the TV money. You know, you get a program, because USF, let's face it, they had one of the most meteoric climbs in the history of college football.
Well, that's one of the things that annoys me about UCF locally. Is I've watched the success of a startup program that actually was not afraid to play Penn State, was not afraid to play Florida State. You know, they played those big games, right?
Right.
And they damn near won and did win some
Right.
of them, right?
Yeah.
And that's my argument with the UCF thing. But getting back to the monies, you know, that money, you know, with Title IX, right, and so many of those other sports are allowed to happen because of football and because of basketball.
Sure.
That it's not just about said player. Other kids get scholarships.
Right. And they get scholarships
educations.
because the money's coming into the school.
Yeah,
and
so it's not just football, right?
Right.
It's not just that. It's like, and literally, you're feeding those kids. You're feeding those student athletes, right?
Right.
For 4, if they go to school there for 4 years, right?
Sure, and medical kids who are in pre-medical programs have better labs and they have better equipment. And
There's
they
other
have
scholarships.
and they're chairing better professors. I think.
Well, you had mentioned the type of talent that USF was bringing in terms of
Sure.
professors once that happened.
Oh yeah. Once they started climbing up toward the top 25, I mean, they were getting professors who were coming in from Ivy League
right.
schools, and they had enough money to chair, them or an endowment, to chair them in a medical school or the sciences or mathematics, whatever it may be, And so, the reality is. While some people may not be sports fans, or they may think it's unfair that they get treated preferentially.
Well, they
fact
do.
Of the matter
They do
is,
get treated.
well, yeah, they do.
Yeah.
I think that to an extent they do, but it's also bringing in money that's benefiting
Billions.
everybody in
Billions.
the university.
Yeah.
I mean, if you go over to USF now, from the time when I went there and graduated in '86, and you go over there now, it's a completely different university.
Right.
I mean, it's amazing. And
But we're in a new millennium also, Chris.
sure, and but it started.
The
with,
internet's come out since you went
with
to
the
college.
football coming in. Yeah, I
Cell
still have
phones,
my
internet,
my
pagers.
handwritten notes from law school. My God,
Yeah, with
aging myself
with
here.
what, a lightning bolt and AC/DC on your folder,
Yeah, yeah, right. Springsteen,
couple of rainbows.
Pat Benatar.
Yeah, it's crazy. It's crazy, and I think actually, and every now and again, like during a football game, you'll see the university's commercial about what they're doing, and I'm going to say this: I don't think, and you say, a lot of people aren't sports fans, and I'll use Miami as an example. Back in the late '80s, when they had the dynasty, the '80s and the early '90s, right? There was no bigger school that I can think of in terms of attention, right? And if they weren't competitive that particular year, which there was a run there where they were competitive for a long time, then they played the spoiler, right? Then they ruined if they didn't make their season, then they sure as hell were going to ruin your season.
Right.
But there was a good, 10, 15-year period there where Miami was, just an absolute powerhouse, right?
And it puts the school on a map.
Well, what was crazy was prior to that happening, Miami is a private school,
Right.
And I know for a fact, when you watch the U, the dean there was just beside himself that all of a sudden people forgot that Miami was an educational institution.
Exactly.
And it became, basically a football team, right? And the baseball team was really good back then as well, right? But I know that there was some jealousy in academia and there, and it was really interesting to see how that affected the school, right? And I don't think universities, tying that in, I don't think universities do a good enough job of thanking or showing what the football dollars and basketball dollars do for the school. Highlighting.
Yeah.
How many scholarship, because of the football season and because of the team's success, we were allowed to do this. And I think that, maybe that's where some of the animosity is from.
It could be.
But, if you look at like what and I'll use University of Florida because that's where I have the most of my experiences, right, in terms of watching what they've done there and how the stadium has grown. And, back in the day, it was opened. That one whole end of the stadium was open, and now it's completely filled, and they've added, 20, 30, 40,000 seats-ish, right?
Right.
And I think they hold over 100,000 or right at 100,000 right now, right? And it used to be 70,000 or 80,000. So, what they've done, looking at the huge athletic dorms that they've built, the quality of what the student athlete has in terms of the equipment that they use, the training that they receive,
Right.
and they've actually rebuilt it a second time, so and it's all state of the art, so it's been interesting to see, but I don't think that they do a good enough job saying we've done, they have Shands up there, which is, a phenomenal,
It's
great
one of the
dental, great medical
Hospital. Yeah.
and they do a lot with they have a huge it's a huge agricultural school, right?
Right.
It's one of the best agricultural schools in the country, right? So and they do a lot with the sharks. That's one of the biggest shark study places in the country,
Right.
So, or the world, actually.
Well, when my brother coached at Indiana, with Indiana basketball, right? They developed the number one fine arts school in the nation. I was shocked. I went up there and they had signs all over Bloomington, that for the 10th year running, they beat Juilliard in art, in dance, in just amazing. And a lot of that is funded by basketball money, coming into the university.
Sure.
And, the football team, improved when they were there. They always had problems with depth, getting.
Yeah. Well, you get those Division I schools, right? Like
Right.
USF. They may be able to get, 5 to 8 blue chippers on their team, whereas Florida or Florida State, pretty much
Get
both sides,
Yeah.
you lose one and one comes in right behind them,
exactly.
And then a UCF is lucky if they get 2 or 3, right? Or USF back in the day,
Right.
you remember USF, right?
Mm-hmm.
They would start, they'd do great, but then as soon as a player got tired or God forbid hurt, that was it.
Yeah, they
then
didn't
all of
have
a
the
sudden that
depth.
was it. And
Right.
when whoever they were playing would just put in another blue chipper behind him and another blue chipper behind him, and when you start to hear what these guys are all from, they're all this or all that, all conference, all state, all
Yep.
it's crazy. Just like you said, the Florida Georgia game, right? Remember that thing?
Oh yeah, the Florida Georgia All-Star game was huge.
Yeah,
They always-
it was pretty much kids from Miami, right?
Yep.
The high school game was. I know there was there'd always be a bunch of kids from Miami. There'd be a couple from Tampa, 2 or 3 from Orlando, 1 or 2 from a school in Daytona or Cocoa, right? There'd be a couple out of Jacksonville Bowls,
Right.
a couple out of the Panhandle, Pensacola, Escambia, Pensacola Woodham, right? And that was pretty much the team. But pretty much most of the team came from Miami.
A lot of them did. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. And Tampa Bay area has.
Tampa.
a ton of football players.
Yeah, baseball.
God, when I went to high school down at Clearwater High, I think there were off of there. It was either the 1981-82 team. They had 11 NFL players out of there. It was amazing. I mean,
That's crazy.
Hassan Jones, who was Chris
Remember-
Carter's wingman
Yep,
on
yep,
the Vikings,
yep.
and Ronnie Moten, who was the starting linebacker for the Eagles, and God, there was just a ton of them, and they were
Vince
just
Papali.
coming out left and right. Yeah, yeah,
Vince
Yep.
Papali played over in the parking lot.
yeah. So it's it's interesting, and that's another thing is the money draws the better coaches.
Sure.
And the better coaches you have, the better the teams are, and they draw. They can recruit better and get better players.
It's just crazy to me, and looking at this from a law perspective, because we always try to tie whatever we're speaking in here with in regards to law or contracts, and this is probably one of the biggest things that we may see ever in college athletics right now. What's about to happen? I mean, clearly the popularity of college football in the last 35, 40 years has gone through the roof, right?
Yeah.
Pretty much I would say, from in my time, I would say mid 80s, right? Late,
Yeah.
because I know college football was big, but I would say from the 80s to now, it's just, and certainly in the last 20 years, it's been a meteoric. Well,
Oh yeah,
ESPN, right?
Right.
I'd say the advent of ESPN pretty much started that because,
Right.
and then the cable outlets are satellite
right.
because everybody needs content, right? And with content, everything becomes more popular, right?
Right. And you
So-
can see more games, and
Oh,
you know, I mean, everybody. You know, you could always find a game,
right.
even when they were playing.
Well, not only that, but you can watch your personal team on their own channel,
Right.
right? Like, you get
Yeah,
the
they have the
SEC,
SEC channel, and the
ACC,
ACC. Yep.
SEC. So it's been pretty interesting how that has all worked out, right? And that was huge. I would have to say, with this image and likeness and this unionizing of the college athletes, those are going to be two huge things that are coming up for us that are going to be like absolutely crazy in terms of college athletics, or dare we call it amateur athletics anymore?
Well, and I think that's one of the big debates, because because they're talking about paying to play or paying for your your abilities,
Right.
and there's just a lot of issues. I think we pulled an article up here. Is just looking at some of them. Take off my glasses to read. Talking about how athletes can be paid, and restrictions on them.
But there's still nothing definitive, right? I mean, because I know that we had spoken about this briefly on another show, that this is supposed to go into effect. Is it next July 1st, right?
Right.
And there's still so much ambiguity. They don't even know how they're going to handle any of this
Oh,
yet.
I mean, you've got like 4 pages of issues here, and each one of them could take months.
We could do a
in
show on
itself,
each issue,
you know?
right? Yeah.
Third-party endorsements, which would be boosters,
Right.
people like that, who not necessarily the sports companies, but
And not
all
every
kinds
state
of
has
people.
voted on this yet. I know Florida
Right.
has and
Florida
passed it,
signed
and
it.
California has. I
Right.
think Texas
I
is
think
in the
Texas has.
is in the mix. If they
Right.
haven't signed it,
And then you're going to see the Midwest.
well,
Ohio,
Ohio, Michigan,
all of
and
those states.
Indiana, Illinois.
Yep.
But they haven't yet, and that's the interesting thing. And I don't know if they're like waiting to see how things are going to shake out. But you talk about from a contractual perspective for these kids, meaning the high school athlete going into college, right? And then here's another thing: if you are not, let's just say you're a walk-on, right?
Right.
And then all of a sudden you blow up at a university.
Yep. And they
Not-
give you a scholarship second year.
Yeah, right. But then what about your what if you get you get endorsement money, right?
Right.
So there's it's really, really bizarre.
And then another thing, aside from the money, is what are you required to do for it? And here's a good example. Personal promotions like autograph signings and meet and greets. Now, this is a student athlete, and I know from my brother and being
Yeah.
very close to college sports for probably half my life, through watching that. And these guys run grueling schedules. I mean, between their sport, staying in shape, having to work out,
There's student
running,
obligations.
their student obligations, their studying.
Yeah.
What happens if someone signs an endorsement deal and say, hey, Saturday you need to be down at this place signing autographs, and that's part of your contract, and
Yeah.
it's in the fine print or what have you. Or at the time it sounds like, yeah, that's fine. I don't have a problem signing autographs.
Yeah. What
But
happens
if it's a
if it
formal
conflicts
thing?
with the
Right.
schools?
And Nike wants you at an event,
Right.
and you're like, I got an exam Monday.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's all kinds of things that are involved. And they're talking about different regulations and proposed guidelines and guardrails, as they're calling them. Another one. This keeps popping up over and over again. Regulation of third parties such as marketing agents and financial advisors. And their input and.
Well, it basically takes you're basically taking a. Well, and here's the thing too: is it's not going to be everybody. That's what makes it weird. It's not like it's this all-inclusive thing, unless they unionize. And I'm wondering if this whole unionize, we got to follow this, right? Because if the college athletes unionize, right, are they all is it going to be like NCAA athletes, right? So if they join a union, will said money certain amount of that have to be paid into that union? And then will it be dispersed equally amongst men, women, right?
Right.
Of all sports,
Right.
Right. So will the gymnast get a check from that image and likeness, or will, the swimmer It'll be interesting to see how that all plays out.
Right.
Right. And
then potential abuses of it.
well, I think
mean-
we're going to see, like anything else, everybody's going to, if you have an agent, what's your agent's job, right? Is
Right.
to push the envelope, right?
Right. So, they're talking like here about endorsements for genuine use of name, image, and likeness independent of the athletic participation or performance rather than payment for participation or performance. So now, where does that lead you? They're not getting paid for football now. Now they're going out and making posters and stuff, and they can't wear their university jersey,
right,
or
right.
does that now involve the school, and the school's entitled to what percentage of that? They're going to argue we're entitled to 100% because you're playing for our university. It's going to be.
It's a shame that money is actually ruining this.
Yeah, but that's pretty much what it's all about.
Well, right.
I mean, it's pretty much almost like the sole issue, and there's just like so many issues involved in it. How they work through this is
It's like tentacles everywhere.
Yep. And I don't know. It's we'll see what happens, but it's going to be it's going to change basically 100 years of regulations now. And how do you do that in a year or less than a year?
Yeah.
To come up with the rules and regulations and what they can do and what they can't do and
where
and
how.
Right.
Where, how.
Yeah, I mean, what if a kid goes to a frat party and he's signing people's sneakers over $100 a pop?
Well, how do you, then how do you regulate it?
Right.
Right, because then if it becomes, it's like,
and
then there's
that a violation,
that.
Or
well,
is it?
Oh, for sure. Well, you think of it. You think of it this way? So contractually, he may not sign with a big, there's going to be a lot of cash transactions.
Right.
Right, and then that is a whole nother set of
difficulties.
Oh, yeah. Well, then if he gets a car, if you're an athlete, right? And let's say you don't have a car deal, but let's say you buy a car. Well, is that a business expense now?
True. Or what about the parents?
Yeah, right. Are
All of a sudden, the parents are driving up in a brand new Lincoln Navigator.
Well, you could
that's happened.
Well, look, they've been hiding stuff for years.
Oh yeah,
right. We saw Reggie Bush comes to mind. When you think of that, which by the way, he's back at USC now because they need to recruit people, so they forgave him, and now apparently he's recognized and allowed back on campus. But it's just bizarre to me. It's very bizarre. It's crazy. It'll be interesting to see. I mean, it's fascinating.
Oh yeah.
Certainly. We talked about it. I think for about an hour the other day, and it was more about the questions that we had, right, versus or the unanswered questions, or scenarios that we thought of,
and how are they going to address all of that? Because they're going to just keep expanding and expanding. So
I think in some ways I'm fortunate. I feel fortunate where we're at because I think we've seen the best of college sports. I really do. I think it's getting mucked up. Too many hands in the pot. It's become very complicated. It's become big business. It's $1 billion industry now.
Huge business.
You look at ESPN. I liken it to what happened with MTV. Is what's happening with ESPN now, right? MTV used to have music videos. It was very simple. It was fantastic, right?
Right.
Kurt Loder, Martha Quinn, right? You watch videos, you listen to music. It was fantastic. It was kind of like the height of brain dead television, right?
Right.
And then I saw a thing the other day. It says, "What? Happy birthday, MTV! You're 35 years old, or 40 years old, and you've only, it's been 20 years since you've shown or played music." Because all the reality.
Yeah, because it's all reality TV and different, kind of off the wall.
Yeah, there's no videos anymore, So it's and like ESPN, right? ESPN used to be fantastic. There was so many different sports. I remember when they used to play like darts and they'd have curling on there.
Oh,
and
yeah.
all that stuff, right? I loved watching.
Well,
darts.
it was great because you could get to actually learn about sports.
Axe throwing.
Right, axe throwing. And
you learn about different sports.
Now, I mean, I don't even know if you would say a similar vein, but back when the Russian hockey team was an issue, when people were debating whether or not pro athletes should be allowed on the Olympic teams, because it was all amateurism. You had college students and maybe non-college students who were just tried out, made
a good
teams.
junior player,
Sure.
right.
And they're playing against an international hockey team that was basically a pro team. And these guys played together for 7-8 years, and they're going up against a group of college kids from various countries who've been together for 3 to 5 months,
right?
Because they have to finish out their college season before they can, and every year who won the gold medal, until the U.S. beat the Russians. What was it,
1980?
80?
Or was it 84?
I'm trying to remember.
80,
It was 80
right?
80, I think it was 1980.
Wait, was it? Yeah, the Winter Olympics, because the Summer Olympics were
Miracle on
boycotted,
Ice. Right.
Yeah, I watched it.
Right.
But actually, they beat the Swedish for the gold, but they beat the Russians to get into the gold medal.
Into the gold round.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
Yeah.
I love Miracle on Ice. Gosh, that was amazing.
Yeah.
What a team.
And again, I feel bad for the athletes this year.
Well, basketball was mid-'90s is when they let the Dream Team happen, right?
Right.
That was 92? 92, right?
Yeah, I'm not sure of the year.
Anyway, mid-'90s is when they did that. And now baseball players, though, you're not allowed to be a pro to play.
Right. Now, baseball wasn't...
But golf, you can be, right? Because they just started the golf in the Olympics this past year.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to remember what the new sports are this year that they were going to
in terms of winter or summer?
The summer.
I know golf was one. I don't know what else. I haven't really been too into the Olympics. I'm more of a Winter Olympic guy.
Yeah, I love the Winter Olympics. Maybe it's because we're in Florida, but the Summer Olympics,
I do enjoy the sprinting.
Oh yeah, the track and field is amazing.
Yeah.
The swimming, the diving. I always love diving.
Yeah, not me.
There's just so many sports, and now you've got to continue to train another year, and that's a good question. We got to look into that as to whether or not they have to requalify.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see.
Not to mention injuries and things happen.
Well, they would have to have a different point schedule too, because leading into it, like if you win a world championship, I got to think that's worth points, right? Or, these tournaments leading into it, they're actually not going to have them, right? Because you'd have to start accruing points now, right? Because you'd have to be qualified for the team by a certain time to,
Yeah, for the selection for the team, and various different. It's just they work so hard and they get to their peak. Now, can you maintain that peak for a year?
I don't know.
Right? I mean, or a month in or something, you lose a match, and the next thing you know, you're off. You're off the team now, and your Olympic dream is shot. But what are you going to do? I mean, nobody expected COVID. It's hitting everything. It's devastating.
It is. Let's talk consult. Let's transition.
Well, it's devastating for the legal profession as well.
We've been reading a little bit on
medical
that.
profession, many other professions.
A lot of these attorneys are hurting.
Yeah, I mean, it's new client.
You follow
Their
criminal a little
retentions
more
are down.
closely than any of the other stuff.
Right. Because I practiced in criminal and well, I mean, for at least a couple of months, they were simply not making arrests. They were, if it was an imminent danger or I think a domestic,
Yeah.
a lot of stuff was let go. Some people took advantage of it, I guess. But you got to adapt, and how do you?
I think we're
everybody's
starting to
adapting.
see the adapting now,
right.
right? Like, because we've certainly covered some of these firms that have gotten the PPP money that are now out of money, and now they're having to downsize and lay people off. We've seen and heard of stories where partners are taking pay cuts, not getting bonuses or bonused. We've seen, I read an article today where a lot of partners are having to take on a workload now,
Right.
because they have to run as lean as possible, right? We talked the other day about the force majeure, and how that's affecting some tenant scenarios, and it's crazy. It's crazy, and we've got the answer. We've got the answer.
Well, communication is the key to just about everything.
Document
sharing, communication, those are two big issues with lawyers. And when you can't have people, or you can only have limited contact, it's extremely difficult to do. I mean, it's difficult to do when you have full contact. When you have limited contact, it's definitely going to affect the quality of representation, and not because people are being lazy or what have you, but simply because the ability to discuss issues is, it's limited. Trials being pushed off, there's all kinds of issues with it. What Consult offers, the primary feature is the video consultation on your phone from anywhere that you are. The cross-platform, you can be sitting at your desk and set up video consultations, and clients don't have to come in. They can just use their phone, and you can
even just accessing your files. Think of it from a client perspective. The ability to go, they had said something to me earlier and I didn't get it, and you're not at home, with your briefcase or your backpack,
right,
or whatever you got your file in. You could pop open your phone and go, man, I want to check this out again. And let me look at,
just
at that,
go into
right?
your document
go into your
section,
document section, or you read over something, you read over a message, or you discuss something. I mean, it's those, dare we say intangibles, right? Where we talked about functional syncytium,
Sure,
right? Where the sum of the parts is greater than their individual values, right?
Right.
Consult is that.
Right.
It's a bunch of common sense tools, if you will, in an encrypted environment that actually benefits not just the attorney, but who they're serving.
Right. And the clients have equal input, because everything that's input, and they can, upload things and make calls if the attorney's busy or in court and they can't take a video call. There's still the instant messaging, but it's not instant messaging like texting on your phone. It's still in the encrypted application
and that's,
of Consult.
That's the beauty of it, is we're offering attorneys and clients a communication tool, right? That they don't have to worry about how they're communicating, because everything's taken care of. It's all good.
Right. And when we use the term documents includes videos, photographs, actual text documents.
Think of that from a PI scenario. Imagine you fall, right? And let's say you get, wow, dude, it's coming. Look at that out there.
Looks like a hurricane.
It's a deluge.
Look at the leaves flying off the palm tree.
Listen, we may be going to Kansas.
We might be in Kansas. Watch out for the house.
Yeah, right? And monkeys and witches flying by. It's crazy. If you have a slip and fall, you can actually video, or have whoever you're with, video like what you slipped on, and have immediate, you can call and get
right. They're
an attorney,
on your phone,
right now, and you could send them photos, audio, video, anything you want, and it's automatically stored as that file.
Right. In unlimited cloud space.
And you don't have to worry about, oh, it's got to be turned into this sort of document, or it's got to be turned into this sort. It comes in and it's stored boom, right
as
there.
is.
Yep. Stamped, time stamped, date stamped. It's comprehensive, robust. We like
robust,
to use.
we will call it.
Yeah.
It is
Yeah.
robust. It's a full feature. It's like a law office in your pocket.
I like to call it the Swiss Army knife.
A Swiss Army knife of
Communication,
legal tech.
legal tech, right?
And now we're have a professional affiliations with Clio and other
Man, I couldn't be more excited. I mean, how huge is that?
the leader in case management and billing, and they don't have, nor do they seem to be interested in doing a communication portion. So we handle that end, and our program, our platform is designed to simply drag and drop whatever you have that's pertinent for the Consult app.
Sure.
You just drag and drop it over from Clio or
Right out of your
Practice
files.
Panther
Yep.
or any of these other.
Well, we talked the other day. Remember when we did that the test, and we did a half a gig of files, right?
The benchmark speeds.
Oh,
It was amazing.
we did ours in like what, 5 minutes, 5.5 minutes,
Yeah, it was.
and we're not going to name any names, but
Right.
the closest competitor was what, 18 minutes?
If that, it was almost like.
I know a
I wanna
couple were
say
in
it
the
was
20s.
like- yeah,
a couple,
it
three
was-
were in the
yeah,
20s.
some of them were like literally like 20 times as fast.
Yeah.
And that was with doing it in chunks where you could only transfer
Half gig. We did a half gig.
Right.
Yeah.
And with the other programs, you had to do
They wouldn't.
limited number of files.
And we didn't lose any files.
Not one.
Not one.
Right.
Some did lose files as well. Some took 3, 4, 5 times as long and didn't have all the files. We didn't lose a file, and we did it,
In a tenth the time.
It was crazy.
It is. I mean, it's amazing. And everything's
It's only
on
getting
there.
better.
Right. I mean, there's the communication aspect, the case management, and they work together. We've got the quick toolbar where you can access during a phone call, documents. You can take notes, calendaring. You can synchronize your calendar or set calendar dates. Tasks? You can do assign tasks, and then when the client completes a task, they just do whatever it is they're supposed to do, put a note into the program, and then they hit a little checkbox, and the attorney gets a drop-down menu or an alert, and it says, hey, the task was completed. Just check it, and you're good
Just
to go.
makes sense.
Yes, and it's going to be an incredible time saver.
Not only that, but imagine this. Back in the day, and you can attest to this, if somebody completed a task, you wouldn't find out for a couple of days that said task was completed.
Possibly not even until the next hearing.
There you go.
I mean...
And how much time could be in between hearings?
Oh, it could be months. It could be 30 days, 60 days, 90 days.
And you
depending on-
you wouldn't have information
Right.
on stuff like that?
I mean, obviously, you're always trying to get a hold of your clients and stuff, but when you're juggling 90 to 100 cases and various things going on with them, plus running, court schedule and, meeting clients and marketing and everything else you need to do to run a law firm, because a law firm is a business. you
Sure.
know. So you've got, the business end of it.
Spinning
and-
plates.
Right. Exactly. You've got, how many chainsaws do you have in the air,
Yeah, that's
And-
it's a lot. It's
So it gives both parties, the attorney and the client, the ability to input and assist in their own case. That's we kind of
well, especially
the-
you, like in a rural scenario, right? Your last stop,
Right.
It was we'll call it a rural scenario,
Sure.
right? Where you were in between, like Marion County and Pasco County, right? And Citrus, you're driving hours in between.
Right.
Sometimes you would see like maybe 2 people in a day because of all the driving you would.
Yeah, because you can't text when you drive in Florida. That's illegal now, and you don't want to be, even though they have hands free.
Well, it's not legal to text.
You're still.
I mean, what
Right.
you're texting, right? So
Right.
you're not allowed really
No.
by law to be doing it anyway.
And when you're having a verbal conversation, whether it's on a hands-free call or not, you're still having to focus on the road, and unless you pull over constantly,
Right.
and take notes, you're just not going to remember. You'll remember the gist of what you discussed, but you're not going to remember certain details.
Right.
And then the worst thing to have
Well, the
happen
devil's
is-
in the details, right?
Right, and then-
especially in court cases.
and you get down a couple weeks down the road, and the client calls you and says, "Oh, did you look into that thing we talked about?" And you're trying to remember, when did we talk about that? And it was like, "Oh yeah, I was driving 2 hours back from Bradenton to wherever, Clearwater or
Yeah.
Newport Richie or wherever the hell you're located." And and there are attorneys who handle 4 or 5 counties, and you're constantly on the go. And and with with the consult, you can also have your staff fielding those issues, or
Sure.
you just shoot
Yeah.
a message
Assigning,
right,
Yeah.
and you can just delegate and get things done, and it's done immediately, and it's immediately in the phone. And that's the big thing, is who doesn't carry their phone around? It's almost like you protect your cell phone nowadays like it's gold, because it is. It's got everything. Like, your life is on your cell phone now.
Yeah.
You know,
Oh, it literally is on
and
your.
now
right.
with Consult, you can literally have your law office on your cell phone
Right.
and just pop into a client or pull up whatever information you need. It's just
Or tablet, right?
or tablet
or
yeah, iPad
iPad.
or your laptop,
Yep. We
desktop, iOS.
It's been
Mac
nice
OS.
with this enterprise scenario and how that's taken off, and we're starting to see the responses that these attorneys that
Big
we're meeting
responses.
with, right, and some of their responses.
Right, they're saying, hey, we think the subscription is a great thing, but can you make an app for our firm?
Yeah,
I
I don't want to share.
Right, a proprietary app
Yeah.
for our phone.
Right.
And the answer is yes, and
Yeah.
they're lining up.
Literally.
Literally, they're lining up and saying, "We'll take one."
Yeah. We want it.
What do we need to
And
do?
by the way, I got a couple buddies I want to turn on to
Right.
this.
And I mean, it's and it was kind of roughly. We've talked about the telemedicine and whatever programs they have. I would say similar, but it's not the same thing.
It's more comprehensive.
Right.
Telemed, it's not like what we do.
Right.
We're giving you an actual a tool, not just a video conferencing platform, and that's the big thing is I think too many people deduce what we have by jumping to a conclusion of what we have, right?
Right.
And thinking, oh, it's just a video platform, but it isn't. It isn't just a video platform.
Correct.
When we allow you to do so many other things, and when these attorneys are looking at it, they're shocked at how quickly and how easily it is to get in contact with a client. What is it? Three button pushes or 4 button
Right.
pushes, and
Yeah,
you're on
maybe.
the phone with a client. And it takes we've laughed at the speed. Right, you and I have giggled next to another testing this
Oh,
out.
yeah.
Right, like, can you believe that shot to a satellite and it's ringing and it's been like a
It still
it's been a
amazes me.
nanosecond, right?
Right.
And that's been shocking to me. It's just
With the cross-platform, you a click of the mouse on the computer, and it sends a message. And as soon as I click the mouse, it's popping up on my cell phone.
Right.
It's popping up on your cell phone.
Or how about when I sat next to you, right? And
And
I'm like, delete that file, and you delete it, and it pops right out of my phone.
It was gone.
Like instantaneous.
Right.
Right. It's not like, oh, the next time you open it, it won't be there. It's like, boom, you hit the button, it's out of there.
It's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, or put something in, right? And
Right.
equally, like, we've done the document scanner, right? Where we, I put the document and upload the document, to the file, and then all of a sudden it's like, boom, it's
And we did a multi-page document. It was like 10, 12 pages. You just
Yeah.
click, 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 and then it asks you if it's the end of the document, and you hit,
Yep. Yeah.
complete or done, and boom,
yeah.
it's
It's
uploaded.
I just chuckle. Technology is unbelievable, and how what a great job Joe has done and Mike has done with it, and how things happen literally immediately, like boom, and it's there, it's done, it's ready. And we know that attorneys are impatient. We know clients are impatient, right?
Aside from impatience, it's like you said, it's practical because you can't keep all of that information in your head while you're doing everything else.
Right.
It's like they talk about,
Well, it's
they
like one
used
of those things, right? You want to get
talk
in the
about
file
the
as
ability
quickly as
to
you can,
multitask,
right? I think one of the things that maybe we haven't mentioned is there isn't a lot of work redundancy.
Right.
We've eliminated some of the file redundancy.
Right.
Right.
In other words, you're not hearing a conversation. Then when you stop, you're jotting a
Transcribing.
note down. Then you got to go and input it into your computer.
Right. Then you got to share it with whoever you're sharing it
Right.
to put it into the main.
And with virtually all of, if not all of the legal software that's out there, it's developed for the law firms and for the attorneys. So you're putting your notes into your file, but the client has no access to that
Right.
unless you
Right. Well, then you got to share it with them. Right.
With Consult, you can do shareable notes. You can do private notes because there are certain things as an attorney that
You're not going to share.
that you don't. Not that you're keeping anything from the client, but it's just different things.
You're just giving them meat and potatoes.
Right, and you can assign them tasks, and they can get them done, and they just they don't even have to call you. They just hit the check mark, and it sends you an alert, and you're notified, and then it's has an alert on the whether it's your documents button or your whatever button is the appropriate button on the app or on the website,
Right.
and it's done, and then you can just sit there and check it off. And like I said, as far as talking to clients, which has been
Well, how many articles do we read read a week? Where, and again, you and I always look at the disciplinary actions, and
yes.
we read the ABA regularly, and I read the Florida
Like-
Bar Association regularly. I read some other bar associations regularly. And what's paramount, right?
lack of communication and poor communication are by far
Yeah.
the biggest complaints.
What's going
Yeah.
on with my case?
Yeah, I haven't talked to my lawyer in
Yeah.
ages, and
Not only that, but how awesome, and how awesome is having the Consult app, or Consult Enterprise, when if you get called for a complaint, when you can say, Judge, or whoever's reviewing the case, look, I sent them this on this date.
Right.
Here's my all my notes on this. Here's this. Here's that. Here's that. It just, you have everything right there.
right.
I
I mean, on your phone, and your phone's with you all the time.
Yeah. It's
Mine
like,
is.
where's your files?
It's right
Yeah.
here.
Well, what do you mean? I got everything. It's comprehensive. I got everything.
Yep.
It's just amazing. It's exciting. I mean, I know we talk about it all the time, but again, like the redundancy or lack of redundancy, right? You put it in, you could press of a button, you could share it with whoever you want to share it with, right? You have that record. It's in the cloud. We've read, another thing talking about the cloud storage. We've read how many articles where people were hacked because they didn't back up their computers and they lost stuff, right? Or of the companies that do have that aren't using cloud technology, which, by the way, the industry is moving.
Everything's moving to the
Everything's
cloud.
moving to the cloud, but still, a lot of smaller firms don't have and don't implement the cloud, right?
Right.
And then they get into these habits where they lose stuff or stuff becomes corrupted because they don't back stuff up, right? It's crazy,
Yeah, I mean, there are still firms, and it's not a bad practice. As a matter of fact, the American Bar Association during the COVID crisis has been saying, well, it's probably a good idea to kind of revert back to the old days and still keep your your electronic records, but keep a paper file too. Well, now with Consult, everything that would be in your paper file is in your phone, and it's readily available to you there, and it's stored in the cloud. It's protected. It's secure. Nobody can access it, and it's accessible to you whenever you need it.
Yeah, and whoever you allow.
Right. And like I said, when you're an attorney and you do get a couple of hours of free time, and you're going through your list of whether it's emails, text messages, phone calls. Nowadays, clients are calling or using whatever methods are available to contact you, and you can just simply make a list of who you need to talk to. You have all your information with you. You could just sit down at your desktop if you're in your office, or if you're out of your office, on your phone, and burn through 10, 15 clients and have conversations with them and jot everything down. It's in your notes. It's all documented, and you're good to go. Off to the next issue. And that is golden. I mean, you can't beat that.
It's taking organization to a completely different level, taking time management to a completely different measure.
Time management is huge in that regard.
Sure.
It's just when you can do something.
It's accessing everything from one point.
Right.
I mean, it's, especially with the implementation of like Clio and some of these other devices where you're dragging and dropping, right? Calendaring, we've talked to attorneys about how important calendaring is, having a calendar that works with all the other calendars, and syncs.
Oh, yeah. Especially when your calendar, excuse me, when they're integrated, because everything that your staff is putting on your calendar or that you're putting on your calendar, it's all going into the same place.
Right.
You're not like carrying your calendar book and looking at it and saying, okay, tomorrow I got this, and this, but you didn't know because you haven't been back to the office that 2 or 3 other things have been added.
Been canceled.
Right.
Right.
And then you're getting emails and text messages, and you're trying to keep up with 30 different streams of communication, and juggling that and trying to sort it out, and figure out, well, when am I going to get this done, and how much
it seems
time
exhausting.
To allot to everything.
It seems exhausting.
Oh, it is exhausting. It's that's and when you have the civil firms and billable hours and things like that. You're having to account for all of your time, and this makes it simple.
Yeah.
I mean, that's probably the best word for it. Is it simplifies the entire process and makes it so much more time efficient and effective.
Well, how and we've we'll talk about it again real quick. The fact that you can take, whether it be a document or a note, or create a task, or know that a task is done in real time, and it's shared, shareable information if it's chosen to be shareable, right? Again, eliminating that redundancy.
Yeah, you're not reinventing the wheel every time you talk to a client. You're just progressing through the case.
Right.
And
what about what you save on postage?
Oh yeah, and gas.
Right.
Driving,
and then time.
And time. And if you're setting appointments and someone can't make an appointment, or if they're late, or if something happens because, like, as they say, life happens, and we need to reschedule, well, now what do? You've got that on your schedule. You blocked off an hour or 20 minutes or whatever it may be.
Yeah.
And now that time is, gone. And now you have to find out another time to reschedule. Whereas if they got, say, caught in traffic, or they're in I always say, because I had 4 kids, the bus
line,
or you're at picking your kids up from some extracurricular activity, or you're, at the store, and you got stuck in line and somebody's credit card didn't work, and you're in Publix for 20 minutes.
It's anything. It's like life. Like if you get a flat tire, you have a blowout. You could work from the tire place. You know,
Right.
it's
And face to face, that's a huge
yeah.
thing.
Well, you're not losing anything.
right.
You're not losing
I mean,
anything.
You're talking to each other face to face as if they're sitting at your desk.
Yep. Yep.
And it's so much more effective than a phone call or
Right.
a text message.
Right.
And let's face it, text messaging and emailing, you don't get the inflection in your voice.
No.
You don't get, it could easily be misconstrued, or people have a tendency to text in text lingo, and you may not even know what the hell they're talking about.
Oh, we were talking about that the other day. How
like,
texting's
what does that mean?
How texting's ruined vocabulary, right?
Right.
And writing skills.
Yeah. I mean,
because
it's
people
like,
actually write letters in text lingo.
yeah, they'll send like a 10-page text message and there's no punctuation and half the words are some kind of acronym. And
Yeah.
you're like, what does this mean?
Right.
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 And you can avoid that by just simply getting on the phone and saying, hey, how you doing? And,
Yeah.
here's your
Everything's-
stuff. Everything's clarified
Yeah.
and then noted. And,
Yep. Yep.
the amount of time is, you can put it in there and you know exactly what it is.
Yep.
So when, I mean, hopefully there's, you never want to have a bar complaint, but, unfortunately, just like there are lawyers out there who don't necessarily do what they should be doing, there are also clients out there who have unreasonable expectations, or they don't communicate with you. They just kind of figure, hey, I just came in and, I retained you and I paid you the retainer. So ball's in your court.
Yeah.
Let me know what to do.
Well,
see you later.
you've shared some stories where you've actually got people off of huge cases and they complained about you to the bar, basically saying,
Yeah.
well, what did you do? And they were looking at what kind of serious time, right?
Oh yeah. Like potentially mandatory life sentences, and you get the charge dropped and they're not being prosecuted. It's like, well, what did you do? You didn't have. It's like, would you prefer to be charged and have to go to a jury trial and risk your life to, in your mind, earn the fee? I don't get it.
dare I say, ungrateful?
It's like, that's why you hired me. That's why you came to me.
Do you understand we didn't? You avoided the process,
Right.
dum-dum.
Which you're exactly where you want to be, which is out of the system.
Right.
So, and with personal injury cases,
You actually you had somebody complain
Oh, yeah.
to you, and you got them out of a potential life sentence.
Right.
Going to court. Did the board reviewing it? Did they even did they laugh?
yeah. Sometimes the way the bar does it, they kind of have a multi-tier process. And a lot of times they'll notify you that there's
been a
complaint filed.
Yeah.
But then at one level, we'll just say administratively, for lack of a better word, they'll review it and determine whether or not there's any violation of the canons of ethics, and if not, they'll just say, hey, it's been taken care of, and this is just to let you know it was filed, and
Yeah.
don't worry about
In
it.
that particular case, how did it go down?
What's that?
In that particular case, how did, pun intended,
Yeah, that was just kind of summarily denied.
just right out of the gate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, just got a letter.
Can you imagine the people there that reviewing it going, okay, wait a minute, this
Yeah.
guy got him out of a life.
Oh yeah, and they're not afraid. They'll call the managing partners. When do I get my fee back? It's like, excuse me, you just got a life sentence here. What's
What are the
price?
partners' reaction to a scenario? Are they like,
they're usually reasonable. Then they understand, and
you really pissed him off by getting him out of that life sentence
yeah, like
and quick?
I don't get it. So yeah, there's all kinds.
I'm not
of,
surprised. I mean, you hear any stories of the general public. It's crazy to me, the things we hear, right? And it's absolutely, I want to say that it's shocking, but in some ways I'm like, yeah, I'm really not surprised,
It's like going into a pizza place and ordering 2 pies and eating all but one slice and then complaining that you don't want to pay for it because the pizza didn't taste that good.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
where's the pizza?
Yeah.
Oh, he ate it.
Well, yeah. Well, what happened? Yeah.
I don't know. It's, yeah, there's all types out there. So, but for the most part, most of the clients are good, and they participate, and they.
It's bizarre. Sometimes it's like the hardest, or you're the biggest. You get rid of. I know I've worked deals in my life, and it's like I've worked deals where you do little deals and you do big deals, right? And it's like the little deals are so much harder than the big deals.
Yeah, and a lot of times it seems like the more you do, you don't want to call it a favor, but you say, well, ordinarily I wouldn't take this case, but
Things have been slow.
either that or you just kind of have compassion for
Yeah.
them and say, well, I know you couldn't afford what my normal fee would be, so you work something out. And for some reason, it seems like those wind up being the biggest thorns in your side, and it's like they're calling and screaming and yelling. You're like,
What is it? No good deed goes unpunished.
right?
Right.
And you don't want to say to them, look, I'm doing you a favor here, but
Yeah.
that's kind of what you're thinking is I'm bending over backwards for you in every way, and all you're doing is complaining and screaming, and you're on the phone driving my secretary nuts. It's like, stop calling.
Yeah, squeaky
You
wheel.
know?
Yeah.
And it's but you don't want to say that because you need to do your job, but and that's part of it is like they want to do your job for you or tell you how to do their job, even though they have no idea
Listen,
what the
don't
job
confuse
is.
Google with my law degree.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Right.
Well,
I looked it up on Google.
yeah. Apparently, you should have handled it. Listen, Perry Mason.
Right. I saw a guy in Missouri,
Yeah. Yeah.
and this happened. It's like, well, you're not in Missouri.
All right. Well, you want to get out of here? Jeez, it's 5:30.
Is it?
It's been an hour and a half.
Wow.
Man, we can talk.
Yeah. The time goes by fast when it's hurricaning out.
College football.
College football. We'll see what happens. But I
It's
know.
going to be crazy.
Well, a lot of them are intent on playing a season, and we'll see what happens. I mean,
Too much money. You know the NCAA's hurting.
Oh yeah,
They need that. They need the cashola.
yeah. And we saw it happen. Was it with the Phillies where they canceled the game, and then
Yeah.
they started really going off on baseball.
Yeah.
How they should have never started the season, and you can. I hate to say it, but you can almost anticipate that something's going to happen, and somebody.
Oh, there's too many people involved that it isn't going to happen,
and
right?
It's like trying to debate politics. It's like there's going to be a group of people out there that no matter what happens, they're going to be against it, and no matter what happens, they're going to be for it.
Right.
And so, you're always going to have complaints about something,
Oh, it's crazy, and
seemingly no matter how
but
you handle it.
What are we going to start to see now? The kids are back to school, right? The
yeah.
narrative is going to be that more kids are getting sick, and you're going to start to see all these, outbreaks, and
and the lawsuits have already started.
I looked at the newspaper
workplace
today,
and the employment suits.
the local news station, and one was a tropical storm article, back to school COVID deaths, and police and racial crap. So that was all the three. We'll call them the Power Three.
Yeah,
right.
The Power Three right now.
So and then Trump. Which you get politics, tropical storms or hurricanes, COVID. So that's
Yep.
everything that's going to be covering right now. So anyway, let's get out of here. Let's enjoy the weekend. Enjoy your weekend. We'll be back Monday afternoon, everybody. Thank you for listening to us. And this has been Real Talk with Consult. Have a great weekend. Stay safe.